Let's begin by discussing what types of interventions support E.C.D. and what types of systems support E.C.D. Firstly, how do we actually define early childhood development? One definition is that E.C.D. is the progressive attainment of sensory motor, social emotional, cognitive, and language capacities, as well as a sense of self that are driven by our biology, our genes, and the environment. These capacities are the building blocks for future human capital, enabling us to think, solve problems, communicate, express our emotions, form relationships, create and develop new ideas. The period of early development begins at conception and continues to about 8 years of age. Here we see children transitioning from their family and home environment to early childhood care and education services, to primary school and their neighborhood environments. Therefore, young children need a range of interventions to promote E.C.D. The World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the World Bank Group put forward the Nurturing Care Framework in 2018. This framework describes all of the inputs young children need in order to thrive. This includes good health, adequate nutrition, responsive caregiving, security and safety, as well as opportunities for early learning. These interventions are not just needed in the first 5 years of life, but really we need to ensure that children continue to receive inputs so that they transition safely and successfully to school and to community environments. The NCF, or the Nurturing Care Framework, is not meant to be business as usual. It is not enough for us to consider what inputs children need, but to ensure that the environment enables children to receive those inputs. That means building the strengths and the capabilities of caregivers so that they can ensure their children are receiving adequate health, nutrition, that they are safe and that they're learning. That caregivers and children are supported by empowered communities. And the empowered communities, the families, are supported by services. These services must work together across child protection, social protection, health, and education. And these services, the communities that we live in, our families, our children, are supported by policies. At the national level, there are many policies that support children and families. But we need to make sure that they are working to serve children and families, no matter where they live. There are multiple interventions that can be delivered throughout the early years and the life course beyond. We need to ensure that all of these interventions come together to allow children to thrive. So what do we mean when we say interventions, platforms, systems, and policies? In addition to the essential interventions of health and nutrition, we need to ensure that E.C.D. is promoted through parenting programs. That is, the skills that parents need to support the healthy development, early learning, responsive care, and care for feeding of their children. It includes the guidance that families might need to prevent violence, to establish safe and healthy routines for care for their children's health, hygiene, and nutrition. It includes interventions in early childhood care and education. It includes interventions that are needed in the first years of primary school. It includes paying attention to the needs of children with disabilities or those who are at risk of developmental delay. It includes supporting mental well-being, not only for children, but for the caregivers that work with children and for their families. It includes ensuring our neighborhoods are safe spaces, child-friendly spaces. And it also includes giving opportunities for caregivers to have education, income generation, and training so that they have access to the resources that they can choose to invest for their children in a way that is right for their family. All of these interventions are supported by platforms. There are multiple platforms, formal and informal, that can support young children. These include community organizations. These include services such as primary healthcare clinics, community health services, or services such as preschools and primary schools and childcare. It also includes the media, which has a large reach. Interventions delivered through platforms are supported by systems, and the systems we're concerned with include health and nutrition, education, child protection, social protection, as well as the infrastructure for water, sanitation, and hygiene. Systems, platforms, interventions. Children are supported by policies. There are many policies that are available. We must pay attention in particular to paid parental leave for both mothers and fathers, for supporting breastfeeding, to ensure that there is affordable, accessible, and high-quality childcare, irrespective of the income a family may earn, as well as child benefits. So what do we know about how well these interventions work? Well, we have evidence from around the world that tells us parenting interventions and that early childhood care and education interventions have good impacts on children's development, but there are two caveats. The first is they need to be delivered with high quality, and the second is that they need to be delivered with sufficient dosage. We need to ensure, therefore, that when these interventions are taken to scale in real-world contexts, that they retain their quality. So we need to be asking, what are the active ingredients that makes an intervention successful? How much dose is enough? And what is feasible in the real-world context? And how can the systems and the policies that support impact on children's development be reached at scale and be delivering these interventions sustainably through scaled systems? In this course, we will use examples to illustrate how the same intervention can be delivered through multiple platforms, how multiple interventions support the holistic needs of the child, from development and learning to health, nutrition, and safety. That these interventions are multi-sectoral in nature, and they need to be coordinated across the systems and sectors we work in. Together, the success of these interventions depend upon how well we work together, families and communities, government, civil society, and businesses. How well do we work together to empower families, to empower communities? How well are we creating enabling environments of care at home, at school, and in our neighborhoods? And are we ensuring these interventions are equitable and inclusive so that vulnerable children are not left behind? There is a child rights and a political imperative to accelerate impacts and action on E.C.D. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is now 30 years old. We must ensure that children's rights are met no matter where they live in the world. We must work together towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Target 4.2 is to ensure that by 2030, all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education, so that they are ready for primary school. But of course, working towards this target alone is not enough. we must be working towards the Point 2 agenda, that is, to ensure halving of child poverty, ending hunger, ending preventable deaths of newborns and under fives, and ending abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence and torture of children. All of us have a role to play.